Hello and welcome to Reflections. I'm Rom Gayoso, your host. Today, our topic is competitive intelligence in healthcare. And I have the right person to talk to us about that, Nir Kaminer. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here with me and my guest today. I know your time is very important, and I'm the guy who will make sure it is invested wisely. So remember, if you're watching us via television, via Futures Television, or on the radio, via Radio Futures, the wave of the future on the radio, you too can be part of the conversation. Please join us in our YouTube channel, and that is IMCI Magazine, where we continue to talk about the topic of the day. So let's get going. So my guest today is Nir Kaminer. He's the founder of MedRev, and he's very passionate about healthcare. He's focused on making sure patients get the best quality care possible. So without further ado, let's welcome Nir to the show. How are you doing today, Nir?
Good afternoon, Rom. Thanks for the invite. Everything is well.
Wonderful. So wonderful to see you, and thank you very much for being here with me. Well, I hope I didn't do too bad of a job at the introduction, but could you please say a few words about yourself?
My name is Nir Kaminer, and I love in the summertime to go up the mountains and in wintertime to go down the mountains. And for these objective reasons, Munich is my home base for the last 20 years because it's one of the best places in the world for this kind of hobbies. So that's what took me over to Munich a long time ago. Since then, I set foot here in this beautiful city, living here with my wife and two daughters. And for the last 15 years, more or less, I've been actively busy with market and competitive intelligence here in Europe. And several years ago, I had the opportunity to found and set up a healthcare startup, which is run on parallel to my competitive intelligence work. And it is nice. It gives me the opportunity to match these two passions together with lots of interfaces and lessons learned and practicalities that are that I took from competitive intelligence, and I brought it into the area of our work in our startup. So that's a little bit some background about myself before we dig in.
Wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about competitive intelligence, and specifically in healthcare. So why CI? Why does it make it so attractive to you that you decided to make your entire life about that?
Healthcare is one of those gigantic business that unless you're involved in it, it kind of goes unnoticed unless you become a patient or you're actively a healthcare practitioner. But if you're not, you don't even realize the magnitude of this industry everywhere in the world, in the advanced countries, in the less developed countries as well. The most fascinating aspect of healthcare from competitive intelligence perspective, and I'm sure from other aspects as well, is the complexity in this market. It's not structured, and it's not so easy as to describe it as other industries where you have the manufacturers, the clients, the suppliers, etc. Healthcare comprised of payers that are the insurance companies. You have doctors, you have providers, you have lobbying groups, authorities, regulators. It is very complex setup. And at the end of the day, we're not talking about business and money, but by patients and people that want to become healthier and get back to their normal lives. So it is big, fascinating, extremely dynamic and complex business. And in order to get into this business and to succeed in this, you really need to have a good grasp of the market, good grasp of your competitors, your clients, your prospective clients, etc. So the value of competitive market and competitive intelligence, obviously it is important in any business, in any industry. However, from my perspective, specifically in healthcare, it even has significantly higher significance and important to make sure things are done right, quality, time, and price.
Wonderful. I want to change subjects a little bit. So you wrote an article at the last issue of IMCI Magazine, and that was explaining how to use, website, visitors data. Could you please say a few words about that article? What's that all about?
Everyone is familiar with the Google Web Analytics and similar tools that give you excellent data about the high volume, the big trends in terms of your website visitors. How many visitors, from where they came from, how much time they spent on your website, how did they get to the website, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from other social media, from what search tool they got into your website. It's really great and valuable information. However, it is all in high volume with a certain usage of it, but there is a new area, there is an area that is called web visitors tracking and identifying. And it not only gives you it is not overlapping, but it is give you a whole added layer of information and intelligence and insight about the identity of the visitors to your website. Now, before people are jumping about privacy and things like this, it doesn't give you the information about the name of the person that visited your website, just from which corporation, from which organization he visited your website. So there's no issue here from privacy, GDPR, or anything like this. It just tells you that someone visited your website from this or that company. So there is significant amount of value here, because it turns the analysis of and the tracking of the people that visited your website not only just as nice to know information, but really concrete, actionable intelligence. The way it works from technical perspective, it is if you have a website, you know the IP address of all the companies, of all the visitors that go to website. So these providers, basically, they have a database that is matching IP addresses to names of corporations. So it tells you lots of information about specific visitors to your website. And it has a tremendous number of use cases. I just decided in the article, and now just to focus on few of those use cases or value added from visitors, web visitors analytics. First of all, in terms of leads generation, you can analyze this and look who from your prospective customers or your existing customers looked at your website, what they were looking at your website, what information they were looking at your website. Were they looking at product specifications? Were they looking at pricing information, services, packages, and things like this? So you can see exactly who from your prospect is really interested in what you have to offer. Personally, I attended a couple of meetings, conferences, and in preparation for a meeting or after a meeting, you see if the counterparts that you met with, if they didn't even trouble to look at your website, you know that they are not really serious about having any follow-ups. Wherever if you see that different people from that company that you met with actually visited your website and looked at different parts of the website, you see, okay, there is some serious interest in it. So it's a good tool it's a good way to basically for leads generation. Another aspect is competitors' insight. Many companies have situations that they are bidding, that they are going to tenders or campaigns or bid situations, and they don't know who the competitors are. And really knowing who the competitors are a big advantage in terms of the competition. And if suddenly you start seeing a suspicious activity from a potential competitor that is looking at the same product that is relevant for the bid, it gives you a good chances that they are your competitors. So this is just one example of the value from competitors inside by knowing who actually is looking at your website. Another valuable aspect is from employment for recruiting and employees perspective, because you can see what visitors to the job site section. So you see from which universities people come to your website, from which companies people come to your website, and look specifically at job news, job bulletins, about us and career opportunities with us. So nice insight that help you focus recruiting campaigns based on these based on this insight about interested parties. And the last point that I mentioned in the article is about Marcom. For the Marcom teams, it gives you effectiveness measurements of different campaigns that you are doing, online campaigns, usage trend, who is visiting us, how many competitors, how many clients are looking at us, prospective clients. Just an anecdote, in a recent project I completed, they suddenly realized that about 95% of the visitors to the news section is competitors. So most of the work about the news content, actually you're feeding information to your competitors, which is something nice to know. So there are many different tools that are helping with the website visitors tracking. You can just Google and find them. They all offer more or less the same solution, which I love, and I try to bring it to the awareness of every one of my interactions. So this is just a few points about the last articles that was published in the last issue of the magazine.
Wonderful. And I know you're not an attorney, but we're getting lots of questions the moment you said, website data. So Facebook, hello, and thank you so much for your questions. So basically, a few questions. So they're saying, well, the US has some rules. California has different rules from the US. The UK has different rules from all of us. And then there's GDPR in Europe. So what is some kind of a best practice? Do we kind of default to the most stringent of the regulations and think we're okay? Or, because how do we keep track of so many rules so that people are asking, well, if we're using website data, how do you know it's kosher or not? How do you know we can actually do this, or we are in some kind of violation?
I did 2 or 3 deployment projects like this, and the whole aspect on the technology and how it is being done was totally scrutinized and checked and confirmed by the legal and compliance teams in Europe. And GDPR is very, very tight and strong about privacy. The thing is that from process perspective, someone walked into your shop, basically. So a certain individual had an interest and reached out to you by visiting your website. This, from GDPR perspective, entitles you to know from which company he came from. Now, again, important to note, you never know the name and the specific individual that was looking into your website. So, for example, if it is someone that logged in, that went into your website and is sitting in an IBM facility in Amsterdam, all you know is someone from IBM in the Netherlands was looking at your website. You are not able, it is beyond the scope, it is not possible to identify that particular individual. So all you get is someone from IBM looking at your website, and then the rest of the information, what did he do, what section of the website he looked at, how did he get there, why, at what point he left, how much time he spent on each area, etc. So by matching the IP address of the visitor to a certain corporation name, there is absolutely no violation here from GDPR or any other privacy perspective. However, from experience, these providers are very good at providing the legal recommendations and the process and the technology behind this. So it's better, if in doubt, to check it with your privacy and with your legal team. These providers will be more than glad to help you and provide you all the necessary information to make sure you're not even getting into any gray zone from a legal perspective.
Wonderful. So different kinds of questions coming up here. So is there any significant difference between some countries have socialized medicine and others do not, right? So perhaps the market on a country that does not have socialized medicine for healthcare companies is much bigger than otherwise. So do you see any significant differences in the way you do your competitive intelligence activities in a country that has socialized medicine, say, Canada versus a country that does not?
From CI perspective, I don't think there is any difference, because in terms of the systems and tools and how we look at what we look at, what we want to find, etc., it doesn't matter if they have public insurance, if they only have public insurance, such as in Canada, or countries like the UK or many of the European countries that have a very large private sector as well. So it doesn't, the structure in the market, the major players, the legal framework, the healthcare system does not have any impact on how we approach the market from a CI perspective. Systems, tools, methods, approaches are the same, irrespective of the structure of the market. The way the conclusions, of course, are tremendously different. That depends on the findings. But other than this, the approach is, I think, is fairly standardized.
Wonderful. So at the beginning of our conversation, you talked about your two passions, so competitive intelligence and healthcare. I think we talked a little bit about competitive intelligence. I wanted to switch to the other passion. So you started a healthcare company, MedRev. And so can you tell us a little bit about that? So what is your mission and what are you trying to achieve with MedRev?
Okay. My favorite topic.
Oh, you said you have two passions, so we talked about one. Let's talk about the other
At least one of them. MedRev is about improving global healthcare and reduce unnecessary care. And in practice, we are providing high volume of second medical opinion and data insight services that is focused on tackling the problem of overutilization of healthcare services. And overutilization of healthcare services means any intervention, any surgery, any diagnostic procedure that does not necessarily yield better results to the patient, and is done most of all for financial reasons rather than healthcare benefits for the patients. And overutilization is the major driver of the ever-increasing healthcare costs. Now, even before the current crisis in Europe and before COVID pandemic, healthcare costs were in constant increase, constantly increased by rate much larger than the intake of new members to companies, higher than the inflation levels. And the number one driver for the ever-increasing costs was overuse and services, procedures, etc., that are not medically necessary, and that there are cheaper and better and more conservative alternatives that at the end of the day make the patient back on his feet at the same time or even faster than these interventions, without sending the patient to hospital and create unnecessary stress and create unnecessary costs to the systems. So this is kind of the mission of MedRev, and the point where it is interfacing in a way with competitive intelligence is technology. And what I mean by that is that in healthcare systems, there are many different solutions, technologies, artificial intelligence components, software, automated software, that the main purpose is to verify and to authorize claims. Patients claim, you need a surgery, you send the information to your insurance provider and they approve it. And in most cases, the approval is done by machines. Certain parameters, very advanced, great machines, not trying to undermine these. However, technology has its limits, and same in healthcare and what we're doing in claims area, and same generally speaking in competitive intelligence, which is one of the points that I will touch upon later. But when you take some of those claims that were approved by all those systems and tools and smart AI solutions, when you're giving it to a human, to a specialist, to a real doctor, the findings are mind-blowing. What we see is from the cases that we review that were approved by all those tools, if a real doctor is looking at the case, sometimes more than 40% of the cases, in some instances 50 or 60% of the cases are actually not medically necessary. And when we say not medically necessary, it means it doesn't bring any benefits. It is putting the patients under unnecessary risk, and it generates unneeded costs to the systems. So with all respect to technology that is doing most of the work and is very helpful, at the end of the day, if a real human is looking at it, the findings are much better and the value is much stronger, because they can find things that the machines just cannot learn. It is right for claims review and authorization. It is right also for many aspects of competitive intelligence that I will touch upon in a second. So this is basically what MedRev is doing, tackling overutilization, improving healthcare provisioning, and help save our clients significant amount of money.
Now, so is this information available to the public? Can they see this?
It is patients' data, and patients' data by its nature is the most sensitive from all the aspects, from HIPAA, from GDPR perspective. So the information is only shared with our clients. However, the accumulated information, when we say that we did an audit, for example, for spine surgeries in a certain countries, and spine surgery, you don't need to be a doctor to know that this is one of the most complicated surgeries. You never really fully recover from a spine surgery, but more than 80% of the spine surgeries could have been avoided. This is something that is interesting for the public. So we have our channels of communicating such results without revealing, obviously, any sensitive data about a patient or a client.
We're getting questions about technology war. So basically, so the questions boil down to, so we find, so nowadays medicine is a business, right? So lots of times, in many cases, the procedure wasn't really necessary, but it was recommended, was approved, and they went through that. So let's say, and you said, some decent amount of that is true and can be verified. So even though that is reported, so they're mentioning a specific service. So this is a US kind of question. I don't know exactly if you have a comparable in Europe, something called Reputation Defender. So it's a special, it's technological war. So there's a special service that you hire. So let's say I'm one of those guys that, prescribes, procedures that are really not necessary. And I'm known for that. But I pay the Reputation Defender, and what the Reputation Defender does, it goes and takes all my reviews and puts on Google page 199. So it's still out there, but it's invisible to the public. So the technological warfare, you are uncovering this information, right? And we're trying to improve the healthcare. But on the other hand, so there's the good guys and the bad guys. So the bad guys are saying, well, this thing may exist, but I will disclose it to you, but on page 199 on Google, so which means it's buried elsewhere. So do you think this is here to stay? So this race between people trying to get the best possible care, and a lot of people are asking about getting information and improving and getting ownership of their own treatments, right? Versus the people or the businesses that are out there that kind of trying to conceal this information and bury it down somewhere.
You can do a PhD in answering this question, and it will still have different questions. First of all, I would like to say, I don't think that there are good guys and bad guys here. Yes, of course, there are lots of fraud incidents as well that are some fascinating. This is a subject of a complete independent presentation, healthcare fraud in different parts of the world. But I wouldn't like to, I don't think it's right to categorize it as good guys and bad guys, because also from those that are recommending unnecessary services, maybe they have their clinical reasons, but overall it is, as I mentioned at the beginning, it is an extremely complicated setup. And in most cases, there is no black and white, there's no right or wrong questions, because at the end of the day, most of the cases are falling in the gray zone. And as you say, someone did some work and he publishes it and he wants people to know and he doesn't want people to know. It's extremely delicate, extremely complicated. Most of our operations are actually so-called in the gray zone. And what we want to make is to create an awareness that there is an alternative course of action, and to create a dialogue between the treating physician and the patient, that there is an alternative way, and then they talk about it, and that's kind of floats an alternative course of action, and this is what we are trying to get. So I don't think there is a one simple right or wrong answer here to put it into a certain group or category.
Because a different kind of question here is, so you talked about medical procedures, but here in the US, so I mean, I'm getting US-centered questions. There's a big scandal about opioid addiction, so the overprescription of
Opioids. Yeah.
medicines. Would something like that be possible? I mean, you're monitoring procedures, but is there a way to monitor overprescription of certain drugs like the opioids?
Absolutely. Part of the work is, pharmaceutical and prescription regimen is one of the highest utilized areas. Medication that are just not necessary, medications regimen that are actually contradicting each other, medication that are not suitable for patients for whatever reasons. There are alternative not original products, of course, that have cheaper alternative. So the whole area of pharmaceutical reviews is rather big, and the numbers as well are in terms of the potential savings for companies. And is especially talking about the opioids addiction. Money is not important here. It's just no matter how many lives would have been saved if someone external without financial incentive would have come and say, hold on guys, does this person really need so many painkillers in such a short amount of time? So absolutely, if there was tighter control of that, the problem would have still been there, but it wouldn't be a problem that killed thousands of people in the US as it was.
Analogous question. Again, going back to the information war. So the question is, so we, again, another US question. We had here, and we still have a big war in the media about information and disinformation about vaccines. And I think the issue is similar in Europe. So the anti-vaxxers and people who basically say, well, it's going to kill you, there's a bunch of things. So would a system like that help us distribute, unbiased information and kind of help quench those kinds of, disinformation campaigns?
Oh, that's a very sensitive topic as well, because from the party or the army of the anti-vaccines, there are lots of really good, reputable doctors that called against it. And I don't think that a process like this of reviewing, etc., would have helped here, because it is such a sensitive, hot topic, and each side, the pro and the against, will bring the army of doctors and army of experts. And the biggest problem I personally see in this area is that decisions are being made based on social media. And no political, no medical, and no business decision should be made based on social media, because the bigger you shout and the bigger the number of followers you have, news are distributed so quickly, and then people see something that have absolutely no stance with reality, and they make decisions based on this, for and against. I see this as a much bigger problem, actually. The decisions and important decisions about people's lives sometimes are made based on waves and trends in social media, and there's absolutely no control, no cross-reference, no reference to any facts when it comes to this. And during the pandemic, we've seen many campaigns of famous doctors that says that this is all conspiracy by Bill Gates, etc. And then when you look at the name of this expert, of this doctor, you see that he doesn't even exist, and there's no name like this. But still, people did not want to take the vaccine because they saw that this big doctor said that it is not recommended. So it is very, very sensitive.
Yeah, there's information warfare happens in healthcare, like in many other fields. So I think that's why people are so concerned. And I think you touched on a very important point in there, which is the role of the media. I think the media needs to step up. I work in media, but I think it's important that we do a better job at managing this kind of information, because there's so much disinformation going on out there. It
Absolutely.
is a disservice to the public. So I think it's important that we all point out, hey, you can't just go around yelling fire. You can't do that anymore.
It's funny. We spoke about in a conference a couple of weeks ago that 10, 15 years ago, as I say, today it's back in the old days, 10 years ago, if you argue or if you make a decision and say, well, I saw it in the news, or saw it on the news, or I read it on the internet, I'm like, oh, okay, then it really happened, then it's real. Today it has nothing to do with reality. You could see something on the front page of the New York Times, and then it's a hoax and it's not real, and it is based on false information. So today, really, every piece of information when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to competitive intelligence, when it comes to business decision, have to be cross-referenced, double, triple check before you make any decisions, of course.
Okay, so I want to ask you a different kind of question. So you do have a very strong background in competitive intelligence and in healthcare. Your two passions, right? So, and people tends to think, oh, this is a thing for the big guys, just for large companies, right? So how important is it? So competitive intelligence to a small startup, and is it different from a large corporation?
Competitive intelligence, market and competitive intelligence obviously is important for everyone. However, I've been doing competitive intelligence for large organizations and for small companies and even for startups or startups. And I would say that it is even more important for a startup, and I'll tell you why. The way decisions are being made in a startup or in a very small company are often gut feeling of the founder of all the decision makers. So it is one or two people, and it is often based on gut feelings. And if you really deeply ask people to put their hand on their heart and decide why they decide that Spain will be the next market for their corporate growth, they'll tell you, I like Spanish food and I like going on holiday to Spain, and that's why I decided. I looked at the numbers and it looked logical for us to go to Spain. An extreme example, but the decisions that are made in a small companies are often made based on gut feeling and not necessarily through a clear, good thought process and decision-making process where you have conflicting interests, you have people that are challenging the decisions, as in a large company. Founders of small companies often make certain assumptions or hypotheses about how the business should be developed. And even if their market insight, their competitive intelligence, the market intelligence that they did does not correspond with these assumptions, they just ignore the signals that they get from the market, or they look for a different information that will support their gut feeling. And that's why the simple answer here is it is extremely important for large corporations, but even more so for startups and small companies. Because the way decisions are made, you need to have good intelligence and follow the intelligence, the signals and the direction that the analysis give you. And you make sure that the gut feeling is following the messages that you get from intelligence perspective, rather than the other way around. And I'm a sinner for this myself. Looking at the company expansion to a certain country in South Africa, where in Africa, not South Africa, but another African country, where all the signals were not necessarily supportive of this move. And my gut feeling was like, yes, but it is big and it is growing. We should give an attempt there. And we wasted a good few months of work because I didn't interpret and I didn't listen good enough to the intelligence that was gathered about the market. So this is my answer to this question. It is incredibly important for everyone, but in particular, even more so to small startups and small corporations.
Yeah, I think you touched on a very important point in there. So the big corporation can afford to make 1, 2,
And
10 mistakes, and it's okay.
correct,
But the
correct.
startup, if it makes one false move, maybe that's the end of
It's
the line, right?
correct, correct. That's of course another point that the big corporations can make mistakes, whereas one strategic mistake by a small company can be devastating to its future.
And one important point that you made, and I thank you so much for being so forthcoming and transparent. So we all make such mistakes, and we don't admit them, right? But yeah, maybe it was gut feeling. We weren't really following what the intelligence said. But I think it's important that you continuously monitor, and even though this is what we want to do, as we continuously monitor, as it turns out, it wasn't exactly what we should have done. So there's the presence of CI allows us to course correct, right? So it wasn't well. We wanted this, we did it, yeah, but it didn't really work. So we have a chance to correct, isn't it?
Correct, correct. Sometimes you have the benefit of being able to trial and error. If you're lucky enough, if you're strong and resilient enough, and you have the necessary resources. But definitely, yes. The important thing is that we all make mistakes. The important thing is not to repeat the same mistakes once. We'll always do mistakes, but learn from the mistakes and do others down the road, but accumulated experience from not repeating the same mistake twice.
Yeah, hopefully we learn. So a different kind of question. So you worked across industries, in different cultures, in different countries. So what are some of the key issues you find today that competitive intelligence and practitioners are facing? So what are those things? Those are the key issues that we have to address.
Oof, where should we start? Okay. Couple of points. I think there are probably four key areas that I want to touch upon in this answering these questions. Before that, just a general observation from my experience, the US practitioners and the American companies in the area of CI are way ahead of Europe. USA is much more advanced in adapting CI practices in terms of the intelligence function visibility to decision makers and ability to swing decisions. It is much stronger in the US than in Europe. And it's funny because I think just a few days ago, Ben Gilad wrote about it on LinkedIn, saying that many European companies do not understand the true value of competitive intelligence. And competitor intelligence is basically looking at websites of competitor informations, and the practitioners are just archiving and distributing the information. So my observation is about European companies, where most of my CI exposure was to. The number one problem I see is technology over-reliance. The blind reliance on technology. People became too comfortable with technology already before the pandemic, and now even during the pandemic, just working from home in front of their computers, lazy to do anything else, such as picking up the phone and talking to people, looking for primary intelligence. Many intelligence professionals spend, not most, but 100% of the time just going through OSINT, going through open sources intelligence, and buying secondary reports that are useless because everyone else buys the same report. So there's no added value, there's no added benefit here for you. And technology is great. The technology, with a press of a button, you can find, edit, translate, create newsletters, etc. It looks good. It's easy. People like it. But is it really what we want to achieve? It is an enabler, but having the good technologies would not provide great market and competitive intelligence insight that companies want to. So number one is the over-reliance on technology. The other aspect is lack of human intelligence and strive to get primary intelligence resources. There is, as I mentioned before, there is over-reliance on technology and on secondary information. and there is very limited knowledge and know-how and tools and approaches on how to obtain primary information, mostly from people. And the best example of this I've seen in a couple of different industry conferences, when I know that in these conferences, exhibitions, trade shows, etc., for me personally, this is the battleground of competitive intelligence. This is where you see the competitors, this is where you see your clients, this is where you see your prospective clients. You should spend all the time there running back and forth on the floors, on the exhibitions, talking to people, etc. And in conferences, you sometimes see the market and the competitive intelligence people sitting at their corporate area and opening their laptops. So I said, why did you come to the conference in order to sit on your laptop? You can do this back in your office. So there is some kind of a fear or lack of know-how, how to engage with people for intelligence, how to use human intelligence, which is, for me, is the most underutilized asset of the intelligence tools that we have. The third point I wanted to touch upon is data abundance. Many competitive intelligence professionals, so to say, they are what I call the copy-paste masters. There is abundance of information, and the people create never-ending reports with too much of irrelevant data. I have seen what is called project intelligence reports that are 80, 90, 100, 150 pages long of useless information, that 99% of this is copy-paste from competitors' websites, news clips, websites, data, etc. 50 pages of share price analysis, different data sheets, because there's just so much information there, but zero value from intelligence perspective. And internally, inside corporations, people say, oh, that's a big report. Well done. It looks great. The people get appreciation for generating such a deep and long report. Does it have any value? Does it have any actionable intelligence? Does it change the course of what we want to do? Absolutely nothing. So we are just drowning in data, and it is incredibly difficult to identify the important data and then interpret it into actionable intelligence. The last point I want to touch, which may be the most controversial, is in many companies, it's the teams or the functions are called market and competitive intelligence, but the word intelligence is just not there. There's no intelligence in their work whatsoever. We're all familiar with the iceberg picture, where only 10 or 15% of it is outside the water and the rest is under the water. And from my experience in Europe, across different industries and market, etc., the real CI professionals are only a handful of people. And in the iceberg example, these are the people that are above the waterline. And the vast majority of people are working in a sleepy, so-called intelligence function. People in CI roles that are doing the same for years, but they never spoke to any primary resource. All their work is based on open source intelligence. They were never exposed to new tools, ideas, experts, training, or things like this. And in my belief, you cannot be regarded a competitive intelligence professional if you did not meet, spoke, or heard of Ben Gilad, Avner Barnea, Arthur Weiss, Rainer Michaeli, or if you don't know what SCIP is, it's difficult to be an intelligence professional. I hear many companies saying, "Oh, we have great competitive intelligence function, and it really works great." What does it do in practice? Creating weekly reports and distributing it across the board of the company. So these are the four areas. There are, of course, much more longer list, but what I wanted to focus is in terms of observations and things that we should improve is to lower the reliance on technology, to tap into humans as source of primary information, knowing how to find the needle in the haystack because of there's so much data abundance, and to start practicing the word intelligence in market and competitive intelligence.
Yeah, I think you made so many good points in there, and I think that perhaps one of the key ones is indeed the word intelligence. So people confuse, sending, Google websites with intelligence. So I think we need to kind of go back to reinforcing, connecting the dots. What does it mean? What's the implication of whatever we're sending on this newsletter to the business? So what does it mean? How does it affect us? So this is the true work of intelligence, and people sometimes miss the boat. I think, oh, we sent the newsletter. That's intelligence.
I've seen it. You just say sometimes. If you're looking at the majority of the people that are in dealing in competitive intelligence in big corporations, I've seen teams of 10, 12, 15 people that are in the market intelligence, and this is all they do. And 5 years ago, their boss went to a skip conference, and that's it. And many of these people are people that are doing it for many years. And yeah, that's why I call it the copy-paste masters. But the whole analysis, the intelligence part of the work is just not there. What I say to my clients is that my reports are usually very small, and intelligence report should be straight to the point, answering the question of, so what impact does it have on us? If a piece of information doesn't have any actionable impact on us, it's not important. It's not important for me in most cases. So looking for the action, looking for the intelligence, this is what I miss to see in many large corporations here.
And I think it's important for us to also reinforce one of the other points that you made here. So this is really a discipline. So it requires, training, thought, methodology. So you mentioned, a few, but like Ben's Academy, or, there's a bunch of resources out there, or, Institute of Competitive Intelligence, Ryan Michaeli runs some fantastic events.
Yep.
Skip, of course. So there are many resources out there. And for us professionals, the field itself is changing all the time. So we too have to go back and study and learn. So it's a continuous learning and improvement. We can say, well, I went to a skip conference 5 years ago, I'm done. That doesn't work anymore, right?
No, and the fact of the matter is that there are thousands of people in competitive intelligence across Europe, but surprise, surprise, when you go to the SKIP European Summit, so to the Institute of Competitive Intelligence seminars, you actually see quite familiar faces time and again. And we need to crack the method, how to drill it, how basically, based on the example of the water of the iceberg, to lift the iceberg up so that more and more people will be exposed to news, developments, seminars, training, expertise, professional seminars about competitive intelligence, and stop just this copy and paste, and really how to do analysis and implications and insight that will help the business as a whole and us as CI professionals as well.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things I really enjoy doing, is talking to people, about the conferences, what's going to happen. So, I talked to Arthur Weiss and he said, what are you going to be talking about? And he's, and then he goes off and this is what we're going to be talking about, the conference. I think we should do a better job at promoting those kinds of events to the community at large, so that, others say, well, you know what? Let's take that time. Let's take that 1 hour a month, let's take 2 hours a month, and invest on ourselves in training, in education, and attending a seminar. And perhaps it's just, asking a colleague or someone like you, what, could you share one paper that would be useful for me? And doing those kinds of activities, I mean, like a brown bag lunch, it doesn't cost a whole lot to buy, a pizza pie and split with people and say, well, let's learn a little bit. Well, when talking about conferences, you are going to one, right? Tell me a little bit about the upcoming conference, and what are you going to be talking about?
Actually, it's touching a little both and some of the points that I'm talking about. It's a healthcare conference, and it is coming from a focus on technology and innovation. And I'm coming with my message and my awareness presentation about hold back our horses with reliance on technology. And actually, we are going actually to speak about MedRev and our value proposition and what we are doing in a way of most of the other vendors in this conference are going to talk about claims automation, approval automation, and how AI and machine learning tools can help you with authorize the claims. And we are saying use these tools. These are great tools, very sophisticated, cost million and save you lots of money. However, let's not be blindly folded and follow only that route. We need to speak to people, we need to speak to experts, we need to speak to doctors that every once in a while will tap into the process, look at some of the claims or high volume of claims, and show you the gaps between what actually the needs of the patients are, what the system needs, what the insurance companies needs. So the gaps between these and what are the capabilities of the technology. So there is limit to what technology can do. In this conference, we're going to present some business cases that shows how many cases were approved, so to say, by those technologies. But at the same time, when a physician, when a specialist looked at them, he says, absolutely not medically necessary, not yields the best patient outcome. It's against the safety of the patient, and an alternative should have been made there. So this is a kind of combination of humans and technology and the limits of each aspect of this. So that's the subject of our presentation at the end of this month.
Wonderful. And I know I'm going to get in trouble. So you're in Munich, and it's almost October. Oktoberfest is coming. So what's your favorite beer?
What is Oktoberfest? I'm not familiar with the term. We missed Oktoberfest for the last 2 years, and it's a fascinating event here in Munich. There are people that are actually saving holidays in order to spend them during the Oktoberfest. You have here a whole set of people at every age and financial status, that people that live through the night during the Oktoberfest to the event and the after parties, and they sleep during the day for these 2 weeks of the event. There are 5 or 7 main breweries here. I'm not a beer connoisseur, but I would say that Paulaner, which is one of the bigger brand names here, is my favorite in terms of the tent that they have and the beer. It's fairly light, so this is my favorite, and we are all looking forward to Oktoberfest at the end of the month.
We're not going to have a fight. So mine is Habe. So it's okay. We can still toast, cheers, and have a great time. So, we still have lots of other comments, which I will forward to you and we'll address them. So, we've talked about today is just a little bit about the event, and a little bit about healthcare, a little bit about competitive intelligence. So it seems we had a wonderful conversation today. I want to thank you, Nir Kaminer. Thank you so much for your time today. And so, folks, we're really just scratching the surface here. We can certainly continue this conversation, but I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. So please visit www.medrev.com, and that is medrev.com, for more information on its service and how it helps patients get the best possible care. So let me say a few words about some upcoming events. So, of course, I have Jerome Glemons coming to talk about the state of the future. We have more talks about technology, the metaverse, sustainability. The Institute of Competitive Intelligence has one upcoming event, and so does Frost and Sullivan. So, by the way, please continue and feel free to continue to submit your comments and your questions. I'm sorry, that's all the time I have for today, but I will continue to address them with Nir Kaminer. I will make sure to read all of them and present to him so he will be able to respond. If you're listening to us via podcast or watching this show as a recording via Futures Television, or listening to the show on Radio Futures, you too can be part of the conversation. Again, just visit our YouTube channel and leave a comment. Please don't forget to share and like this video, and do subscribe to our channel. I am counting on you. It is time for us to start saying our goodbyes. Again, thank you so very much for your presence with me and Nir Kaminer today, and for your participation, your questions, and your comments. You can always reach out to me, to the magazine, the host, via Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. I am looking forward to seeing you again soon in another edition of Reflections, and I'm going to leave you with our institutional message. Thank you.